All right, last but not least, let's talk about the alternative. All right, so the alternative is to reject compulsory nature. And I want to talk about what that means. So, Morton argues that beings are nothing but relationality. Deep down, we are embodied without essence. We are intermeshed in each other, and he would call other life forms strangers whose strangeness is irreducible. So, actually, the easy way to put that is strange strangers. That is what we think of as other beings. You have to be careful when you're talking about this stuff because as you talk about the link debates, you need to adjust your language. So I might not have adjusted my language in all the other parts of the lectures. You should do that. Think it through. Other life forms you should call strange strangers, but you have to explain why. That is true. You can't just start calling people strange strangers and be like, why didn't my judge get that? Because they don't know what the hell you're talking about. You have to tell them. All right. But what does it mean, strange strangers? Well, it means that we need to thoroughly revise ecological notions along the lines of interrelatedness, that all life forms deny boundaries and deny the belief of an inside outside, which means that we are all permeable. We are all interrelated. And I know you because I know me because of you. All right. And my being cannot really be separated. The way that I know my being cannot really be separated from you. Which is why we are nothing but relationality all the way down. And this is not a way of understanding the world because queer ecology would undermine the world. The world has horizons. The world stops. The world is contained. The world has telos, if you will, boundaries inside this world, outside this world. Rather, there is no world. There's just a mesh of interconnected life forms. So if they were to say, well, what is your alternative? You would say it is a mesh of interconnected life forms. That is our alt. That's what it means to reject compulsory nature. That's what we would have afterwards. Because we already talked about nature not being a thing, not being closed, something that has inside or outside borders. And now I want to talk about what compulsory means. Compulsory in the context of queer theory means anxiously repeated, constant affirmation, a reasserting of itself as biological, as normal, as persistent. So to be against compulsory nature means to be against the anxiously repeating, constant affirmation, continual and persistent reasserting of a closed concept of the environment as as we know it. And when you're against that, what you are now in favor of is a mesh of interconnected life forms. That's what you're now in favor of, because that's what's not interconnected, and that is life as such. That's what life is, and that's why life is not neat and simple and closed, because life is, as our first card says, it ends beautifully. Life is catastrophic, monstrous, non-holistic, and dislocated, not organic or coherent or authoritative. That is life as such. Life is not natural, it's life 1.0, so to speak. Meaning that, it's just the first version of the beta test, if you will. There's nothing inherently natural about it. All right. So that's what our alternative is, and our argument is that if we were to accept that intermeshed life, that it would be a much more productive relationship with the strange stranger. Right? We would stop doing violence to the strange stranger, and if we could move to a world where we just didn't do that violence to each other anymore. There are some violences that may be inevitable, but there are some violences that we're actively choosing. Don't let them fool you into saying violence is inevitable. There are violent choices we make. We should choose differently, particularly if we're capable of it. Alright, so basically this is video 2, because YouTube only let me upload 20 minutes worth of video, which is probably fair. And if I'm in the Twin Palms, it took me 17 hours to upload it. So, this last video is about how you deal with some of their answers to your stuff. And I'm not going to deal with all of them. I think you should be able to figure out some of that stuff, like no alternative. I think you should be able to figure that out. How the alt solves the case, I think you should be able to figure that out. You know, that sort of stuff. It's not very hard to take the idea of intermeshed relationality and say, yeah, we would solve hedge because we wouldn't have it anymore. We wouldn't have dominance over other beings. Like, that's what hegemony is dominance. We wouldn't have dominance, but we wouldn't need dominance because we would stop the choosing of violence. Does that make sense? I'm asking you. Answer me. You're not going to answer me. Anyways, sorry for the mumbling. Now, what I do want to deal with, though, are perms and framework. All right, there's lots of different types of perms. Answer each perm directly. Write that down. Answer each perm directly. But I'm going to talk about some of the top level answers to permutations, or answers that apply to every legitimate permutation. If you lose to like perm do the alt, you lost to an illegit perm. So I can't help you in that world. But you know, if the permutation is a genuine combination, these are some really good answers. First, the permutation is part of the compulsion part of compulsory nature. It is a repetition. It is a reasserting of the concepts of nature back into the world of queer ecology. Like, it is a constant need for reintegration. You just can't let it go. The permutation is holding on. It's compulsion, it's repetition, it's reaffirmation, constant affirmation, because the permutation demonstrates how anxious we are about letting go of nature. Oh my God, I can't fully let go of it. If I fully let go of it, then I wouldn't be able to do the plan, and the plan is really friggin' important. The plan would be less important if we change the way we relate to each other. Right? It's anxiety. The permutation is anxiety. And that is compulsion. Second, queer ecology is fundamentally negative. It is fundamentally an anti. It is an undoing. It is a deconstruction. It is a tearing apart. There is no telos to it. So the plan has a telos, it has an endpoint, it has a destination. You can't stick a telos and a no telos together because you end up with a telos. So it is a fundamental negative. It is a deconstruction. It is not a creating. Third, the permutation is probably parasitic. Because the reason why is because the permutation has links. We have proven that there are links to the idea of the plan, that the plan is built with essentialized concepts of what the U.S. federal government is, that's identity. The plan is built with a separation between human and nature, where humans do things to nature, even if it's drill, or if it's protect it. All right, that's the plan. That's the undergirding of the plan. It's the assumptions that go into writing that plan. So we have links, which means that the permutation is parasitic because it is feeding off of the alternative. It will feed off of the alternative. And we have a good permutation card that says that there's a difference between living in symbiosis and carnivorous, being a carnivorous parasite, right? Now, what we're trying to say is that, look, if they can prove symbiosis, if they can prove there's no actual link to the grounding assumptions of the plan, right? Because grounding assumptions of the plan, that is the same thing as a link to the plan itself, right? This is how you built your plan, right? Your plan cannot exist without these assumptions. This action that you're taking would not be in existence absent these assumptions. That's a plan link. You need to explain it as such, right? If they can prove that our worlds exist in symbiosis, meaning that the grounding of the plan is not based on the arguments that we talked about, that you could do this action, that this action is not motivated by our arguments, by our link scenarios, then they should probably win, because they're right. There's no reason to reject them. But if we win a link argument that proves that the plan could not exist absent one of the assumptions that we've talked about, that the action of the plan would not exist, then it is parasitic. It is feeding off of, not working with. And the only reason that anything would be functional in their world would be because it would get all its juice from our alternative. And that sort of that parasitic process of thought, we're not talking about animals, we're not talking about the strange stranger, we're talking about thought processes. That parasitic thought process is a ontology of domination. It's being by virtue of living off of other beings. Number 4. Nature is an aggressive concept. Or we have a good card on this. It's just like, look, the idea of the natural is aggressive. It does not go away easily. It does not want to be undone, which means that nature, it leaves no space for alternative ontologies. It embraces differences as natural, such as, well, of course we're all different. That's just nature. I'm not trying to say we're the same. That is the embedding of the natural back into different. We need to eradicate the idea of the natural, right? The idea that life is natural, that life is normative, that life is beyond our choices. And that's what gives the alternative a chance. So we cannot risk including even a little bit of nature, because nature is aggressive and it crowds out aggressively any other thought. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is framework. I'm not going to give you all the framework answers. There's like a million framework arguments, but I'm going to tell you two that I think are top level, good general arguments. The first is that the framework essentializes debate. It says that there's a core that debate should be, and it recognizes even that its essentialization is a choice, right? They're not saying that it is this way, though if they are, you should also make nature links, that they are making a claim about the nature of debate. But probably they're saying it should be this way, which means they are literally conceding we should choose to eradicate difference. We should make better choices than that. The debate community is smart people, and they should make better choices than the eradicating of difference. So this is our essentialism argument. This is part of heteronormativity, to have a narrow vision of the world, an AFNEG that is always predictable, is fixed, it has a telos, and therefore we can wrap around it and we can know it. That's not how life is. That's not how life is. And so it is a really good idea if debate come to understand life. Because if debate cannot come to understand life, then it cannot deal with the things that are happening in life. And if it can't deal with the things that are happening in life, there's no point to debate. We believe that debate can be better than that. That debate can be a place where we can choose a different way to prevent violence. Second is, I think framework is a way of calling critiques contamination. You are contaminating debate, and it seeks to solve, to rectify the contamination, right? It's not fair. Your fairness arguments are this, the bad education arguments are this sort of contamination type of argument. And we should say, yes, queer ecology is contaminating, but you are already contaminated, debate. You can't go back. There's no pure, pristine, this is the nature, thinking of nature as pure, pristine before humans messed with it. They are thinking of debate as pure and pristine before K came along. And they hearken back to the days of yore when there was none of this critique stuff, this gibberish with which to deal with, and things were fair. Debate has never been fair. There have always been theory arguments. It's a huge circle of complaint about what is unfair. Debate was not fair prior to the K. There is no pristine debate to return to or to move towards. There is only contaminated debate, which means that all of their arguments are just terminally non-unique. They will never, ever, ever be unique. You cannot get to their framework. I think that's really important because it also cuts off their ability to solve anything. You can never get to their framework because there can never be an uncontaminated debate. Ever. The sort of thought that they want will always exist in debate. They cannot eliminate it absent a process of eugenics. And so you have to choose. Which would you prefer? A process of eugenics or learning to deal with life as such? Learning to deal with the fact that we are contaminated. All right, I think that those are some good basic answers to framework. Good luck.